Ukraine just carried out one of the largest special forces operations in its history. In fact, it's an operation that's almost without parallel in the history of warfare. They smuggled hundreds of drones into the Russian Federation and attacked several strategic air bases, destroying several bombers, Russian bombers on the ground. The Ukrainians, of course, claim 40 or 41 bombers were destroyed. The Russians claim a smaller number. But this is the first time that strategic bombers of one country have been destroyed on the ground. It's very important to understand these are nuclear weapons carriers. These are part of Russia's nuclear triad of land, sea and air-launched nuclear weapons. So destroying a very large number of them on the ground is an audacious operation. Of course, it's fraught with strategic uncertainty. But at the basis of all of these special forces operations is speed, stealth and simplicity. That's how the Ukrainians carried out this attack, which they call Operation Spider's Web. So let's take a look at the other great special operations like Spider's Web that have existed in the past, that have been carried out by several countries. Let's start with one of India's biggest special forces operations. That's Operation Jackpot. Not many know about this because this was a covert operation carried out by the Indian Navy in 1971, before the India-Pakistan war began in Operation Jackpot is what it was called, and it took place in August 1971. The target was what was then East Pakistan. You had four very important ports in East Pakistan. That's Chittagong, Narayanganj, Chandpur and Khulna. Now these four ports were the lifelines for the Pakistani military garrison that was controlling East Pakistan. And on the night of the 15th of August, over 200 specially trained naval commandos, trained by the Indian Navy's Directorate of Naval Intelligence, were launched at these ports from Indian territory, and they carried out simultaneous attacks on merchant ships that were anchored in all of these ports. Many of these are riverine ports. Chittagong is one of the few seaports that East Pakistan had. Now on the night of 15th August, the early morning of 16th August, naval commandos who were hiding, they had been infiltrated from India into East Pakistan. They used limpets. They were combat swimmers, as in they carried the limpet mines on their chest. They swam towards these ships, merchant ships that were parked in these three ports, and they carried out simultaneous explosions, destroying ships at Khulna, Chandpur, Narayanganj and of course Chittagong. Something like 44,000 tons of shipping were sunk or destroyed that night. Something like 22 ships were sunk or disabled, and over 200 naval commandos were used for this operation. So this is a covert operation. Like I mentioned, the government of India and of course the Indian armed forces did not take responsibility. They didn't own up to these attacks. These were the work, of course, of the Bengali Mukti Bahini forces, the naval forces of the naval component of the Mukti Bahini forces that operated under the Indian Navy. But this operation was planned, the training was done by the Indian Navy in camps in West Bengal, and they were all launched into these ports, and they carried out these simultaneous attacks on, as you can see, on 4 ports through the length and breadth of East Pakistan. These are one of the largest special forces operations carried out by India. Of course, it's a covert operation, but the fact is that the planning, the training, the ideation, all of that was done by the Indian Navy's naval intelligence, and this remains one of the most devastating attacks that were carried out ahead of the 1971 war between India and Pakistan, which began on the 4th of December 1971. But these operations were carried out by the Indian Navy, which were helping the Mukti Bahini's naval element. They had in fact raised and trained all of these Mukti Bahini naval commandos in camps in West Bengal and in other states like Meghalaya and Tripura. So one of the most devastating attacks of the 1971 war, in fact the run-up to the 1971 war, that's Operation Jackpot.